When the TDA asked us to get involved in carrying out the evaluation of ICT in initial teacher training, we knew there'd be a range of outputs from the project. And one of the key ones we thought was to provide some overview advice and support for people who are going to be going through a similar process of introducing new technologies into digital teacher training in the future. And this particular piece of the report looks at the sort of overarching lessons that we learned coming out of the case study work that we carried out. We present in this section of the report a model which draws on three general characteristics which we thought were key in considering what made an implementation successful or not. The first of these was the status of any technology, both its technical status, how easy it was to use, but also its social status and its learning status. The second group of factors were concerned with the alignment with the aims of the implementation with individual needs and organisational agendas. So was the technology being introduced because one or two people were interested in it, or was it really meeting a genuine need both for students and for the organisation as a whole? And the third group of factors was around the general kind of capacity for innovation that any organisation has, from the individual through to teams through to the organisation as a whole. And these three groups of factors we kind of conceptualised in the end as three cogs. And when these three cogs mesh together, then I think any innovation is likely to get going and work and really be successful. Whereas if any of them are slightly undergeared and they don't really exert influence on the next two cogs, then any innovation isn't going to really become widespread and really have a depth of impact. One of the key groups of factors that we identified was the status of the technology. And I think most people concentrate on the technical status of a piece of technology that they're implementing. So how easy is it to use? How well developed is it? Is it compatible with other forms of technology? And these are quite key aspects of any innovation. But we also identified two other forms of status that we thought were equally important. The first of those was the sort of social status of a piece of technology. Was it something that was aspirant? Were teacher trainers seeing it as something that they should get involved in? Were pupils seeing it as a piece of technology that they thought was meaningful and relevant to their lives? And that certainly did ease any innovations when people wanted to use the technology. And that aspiration could be professional aspirations as well. Many of the teacher trainers saw being a teacher meant using certain forms of technology. And if they could see that as something that other teachers used, then they wanted to get to know it and understand how it could be used in their classrooms. Beyond social status, though, was the learning status of a piece of technology, which was people's understanding of how it could support learning and how it could underpin learning relationships. And sometimes certain pieces of technology didn't seem initially to be that powerful in terms of learning. And it was only through being playful in the innovation and getting to know these pieces of technology, people started to really understand its potential, both for their own learning and for the learning of their pupils. And often people's understanding of the learning potential of a piece of technology arises outside of their professional lives. They may use a piece of technology, a website, a social networking site, in the rest of their lives, and through that start to learn and understand how it could be used in their professional lives and in their work with pupils and others. So the learning status is one of those aspects that you need to attune yourself to rather than something that's very obvious at the beginning. And in selecting then a piece of technology and the ease of innovation, considering the status of the technology both in terms of its technical level, its social status and its learning status is really important.
All teachers need laptops these days. You can't be connected to the world without a laptop. You can't do all the things you need. You can't use the whiteboards. You can't engage your students if you don't have access and constant access to IT. And having constant access to IT means you have to have something that you can take from one place to another. If you've got your laptop, you can work it anywhere. You can attach it to the machinery in the classrooms, which makes the whiteboards work. You can attach it to students to make them work. You can just use it.
I can go in and show other professionals in the job how to use it and look at this really good programme. So I'm not the only one who's asking questions, wanting things, needing things. I'm actually showing other professionals in the school new programmes, new software, and I feel quite confident in doing that, and it makes me feel like I've got a place in the school.
Obviously, being staff, you have to be very careful about Facebook and all those things, making sure that you don't have any students who try to add you or have ways of looking at your page and make sure you've got protection on there. But you know, they do think that you're pretty cool if you know how to use it, and it's like, oh, miss, did you see blah 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 on TV last night? No, but I caught it on BBC iPlayer later, and oh yeah, miss, BBC iPlayer is wicked. So I think they sort of they like the fact that you know what they're talking about.
This is the first time I've used it, so I'm a brand new person to this particular technology. I can see that there is a purpose for it, but to me at the moment it doesn't seem reliable enough to use on a regular basis. So if you actually set time aside for it and it goes wrong, then that time is lost and you don't get that time again with the students. So I have positive and negative feelings about it. I think the students benefit enormously from it, and it's great to get interaction with schools without having actually to go into the schools, so that they can work with universities and you can see children in action in that way. But I'm not happy yet with the reliability of it.
Until you're involved in it, until you get the feedback from the people who are using it, you're not always aware of the implications of. So we didn't set out with saying, well, it was about inclusion. We didn't necessarily set out about any time, anywhere. But then you start seeing students accessing, for instance, a quiz like they did with my group this morning on their mobile phones. And you think, hey, there's another possibility here.
The next group of factors that we thought were key were those around capacity to innovate. And really when you think about capacity, you've got to think about it at different levels of an organisation, from the individual through to the team to the organisation as a whole. And what was obvious in this piece of research was that you needed different levels of capacity and they needed to be interacting. So when we consider individual capacity, building that as part of what you were doing was a really key aspect of people's innovations. Individuals' ability to use a piece of technology, to share it with others, to demonstrate it, to model its usage was very key. Then we came into sort of teams and groups of teams. More often than not, in initial teacher training organisations, it was certain groups of staff, could be subject-based or otherwise, who were really the drivers behind a piece of technology being used and taken up. And I think there's three parts to that were quite key, really. One of them was a willingness to experiment, to be playful with the technology. Another was a kind of openness to it and not to have a closed mind about what it could do. And I think a final one was to also develop a kind of an evaluative culture within the team. Just a critical eye, not just taking on something because it seemed new and was interesting, but did it really make a difference? Was it really worthwhile? And then the final level on the whole organisational aspect of it, the key one was really the leadership capacity, that the organisation as a whole got behind this innovation, that it wasn't just left to one group of staff, that senior leaders as well as group leaders worked together to make this seem a really relevant innovation for a whole range of people in their organisation.
There's quite an ICT buzz here. As I say, we've got the laptops, one each when they come in here, the facilities to transfer their pictures. There's a real buzz and people sharing ideas and doing things with the cameras that has made them, I feel, a lot more confident in what they do.
Stoke Park, the school we were working with today, were part of our original partner for the TDA project. So they were looking already at that student relationship in terms of school experience. So we could draw on a school who had video conferencing experience. The children had a bit of confidence with video conferencing, and in a way that benefited us because then we could initiate our students into the system and we weren't all novices at exactly the same time.
What we've embedded in the processes, and we could have done this without the website, is the idea of the reflective practitioner. You know, what makes good teachers are those teachers who can evaluate, you know, what's been happening in the classroom, look at the strengths, look at the targets for development and reflect on that and think about ways to go forward.
When you're thinking about the learning that's happened in the week, you can really think through the issues that have arisen or how you can move the children's learning on as a result of the input that you've given or that you've collectively sort of taken part in. So yeah, hopefully I'll be a much more reflective teacher because of it.
We found that the best is where people feel ownership. In other words, they can do what they want, they can get support, they're not constraints. If they want to put up a document or a video or something, they can do it.
Well, we were very much encouraged by our 2 young ICT people to get involved in the VLE, and I suppose one of the good things about the VLE at the beginning, particularly for us oldies, is that you can play with it in the privacy of your own room, so that you can actually, I think probably I started at a very low level, just putting on notes and files and things, and then once you saw how the students were using them, we were able to build on that, so that then we started thinking about replacing lectures sometimes with materials on the VLE, and then I think it's just kind of burgeoned. It's just people have found that they feel comfortable with using the VLE and have started to experiment a little.
We need to have enthusiasm. I try very hard to be enthusiastic, even when the technology isn't playing as well as it should be, because I think it would be easy for teachers to back off. If they saw it failing, they would give up. They're busy classrooms, they don't have time for technology that doesn't work.
It definitely is a team effort, because we all have our various different roles, and IT services here and Kathy in her role as primary technical assistant. And I think it's really important that people had that enthusiasm. We were all willing to give it a go.
The final group of factors is around this issue of meeting needs. So that addressing the issue, is the technology just looking for a problem to solve, or is it really meeting genuine needs? Is it really adding real value to sort of basic processes and key processes in organisations? And this came out very key when we started to look at trainees' uses of technology. If it wasn't meeting specific needs, it wasn't adding value to sort of the core interactions between them and teacher trainers, then it wasn't going to get taken up. And it's very important in considering an innovation is whose needs are going to be met, what key processes are going to be added to, and just as importantly, can this be done anyway, much more simply, without the use of technology?
I think the development of Moodle has been a success here because it is about empowerment from the grassroots, if you like. It's not about somebody coming in and saying, look at all these wonderful things you can do with this ICT and the technology is fantastic. It's about saying, look, we've got this here, we've got this opportunity, have a go with it, see how it works for you and see, what you're going to need to support you in developing it further. And I think that's been the success of it here, really, that it is at that really local level. And I think that's the key really for us, and I really do think that that's been part of the success of it, that it's about meeting individual needs.
It's timely. It meets a need that we have as an organisation, and it offers, I think, the trainees better ways of moving forward. They'll know where they are at this point and know what they need to do to get better. So we are quite enthusiastic that they look at the grades, say what they're doing, and compare it with their trainers, discuss it, and know how to target improvement. So the best elements of assessment for learning. It's what we're teaching and using with the children, using it with the trainees.
We started looking at enhancing communications between ourselves and the students and staff in schools when they were on school-based training. And we trialled it with 12 students, and at first it was actually seemed to be working quite well. The students were posting questions, we had contact with the staff, and then when the actual block of about 6 weeks started, everything went quiet. And really, when we started to look at it and evaluate it, we found that actually the students, the staff and colleagues from here who were going into school could actually talk to each other. So actually having a virtual response or even a forum didn't really work. So really when that happened, we then had to sit back and stand back and say, well, okay, what are we going to do now? And so I suppose the next thing that we tried to do was say, well, myself and a colleague who was in secondary was say, well, okay, how can we enhance the student experience? If it's not going to work in that way at this moment, we would actually perhaps look at it in terms of putting our courses there. So we were starting with a very small base, and we were in control of it, which was another area.
Over the last year, some other tutors have invited me to do a session with them so that they can get to know more about ways of using ICT in their subject. So we have little team teaching sessions, and I've done that in science, literacy and maths there. And what has grown out of that is and they've admitted this, an increased confidence in knowing where the ICT will fit in the curriculum. I do feel very positive about the way teaching and learning is happening with our students. The pedagogy, you might say, of how they're using ICT in the curriculum there. They're confident students, they can see ways of using it without thinking about it. They can plan and say, we could use the camera there, we could use this programme there. And so I see changes, yes, certainly here.
The way that using the Moodle has evolved has really been through need, and being able to talk with colleagues, with Graham, with Stephen, and more recently with Marcus, our e-learning advisor in college, to really look at our needs and specific to each module, because every module is different, and so the way that each area is set up, it may work well for one module but not be appropriate for another. So what I've been able to do is access support and guidance as I need it, really, as I've gone along. And of course, because they have oodles of expertise, I've been able to tap into their knowledge of ICT, because I know what I want to do with my courses, but it's about being able to tap into expertise elsewhere to enable me to develop my modules. So I've found the whole process very empowering, actually, from being what I would consider to be quite an ICT novice, and maybe still, because I don't have a mobile phone even, so, but I do see the potential, and I really do think it's a valuable resource for us. I couldn't work without it now, actually.